So next speaker is Iftikhar from our office in Pakistan. Iftikhar is not the only person who's doing labor law. He has a big lot of other people who work with him. He's there already since 2008, working on the labor law, and not in a few countries, but now around 120 countries. He does it with many people in the team, but also with many people around the world, and checks with them anything related to labor law and obviously minimum wages. Can you start the video, Niels and Akash?
There is a misconception that developing countries are following a race to the bottom, where they are reducing labor productions in order to attract investment and jobs. On the contrary, our work at the WageIndicator Foundation indicates that the developing countries have enacted labor legislation ensuring protections to the workers. This legislation is mainly in the field of equal treatment, prohibition of sexual harassment at work, and prohibition of child labor. But these are just examples. This is Iftikhar Ahmad, the labor law specialist at the WageIndicator Foundation and founder of the Center for Labor Research. The Center for Labor Research is the global labor law office of the WageIndicator Foundation.
Hello everyone, I'm Shanza Sohail, Research Associate at Center for Labor Research, WageIndicator's Labor Law Office. And I will be talking about our work on building transparent and inclusive labor markets through mass awareness. So our work involves, it includes decent work check documents, that is labor law pages. We have worked on the Labor Rights Index 2020, and a new version will be coming soon later this year. In the future, we are looking to work on a compliance pyramid and a contract shop, which I will be talking about in the coming presentation. So the discussion revolves around the awareness of workplace rights, historical background of our work, status, challenges, future, and social impact of the work. So the question, we start by the question, why raise awareness on workplace rights? So raising awareness on workplace rights involves, firstly, Sustainable Development Goals 8 and 16. Goal 8 refers to full and productive employment and decent work for all. However, decent work for all cannot be achieved unless legislation enacted is in line with the international labor standards and there is awareness raising among workers of the statutory rights. In the same way, Goal 16 refers to strong and inclusive institutions as well as the rule of law under its various targets. Raising awareness also involves awareness and compliance of labor law. We all know that economic data is more readily available compared to information on labor rights, which is quite lacking. There is considerable literature on the link between enforcement of labor legislation, that is compliance, and the level of awareness among workers. And research suggests that workers' awareness is strongly associated with better working conditions. Enforcement can be increased by a vibrant labor inspection system and a strong trade union movement, which is prevalent in developed countries. But in developing countries, there is low collective representation of workers, and labor inspection systems are budget-strapped and understaffed. In this situation, workers' rights can be better enforced through a bottom-up approach, which is based on individual awareness of their rights and subsequent complaints. However, firstly, this approach requires the dissemination of legal knowledge among workers. Looking at the historical background of our work, in 2008, WageIndicator started raising awareness through labor law stories. In 2010, the labor law was converted into a question and answer format. In 2013, the recent work check document was introduced with WageIndicator under the WageIndicator labor law database. In 2020, the Labor Rights Index 2020 was launched, which compares legislative rights across 115 countries. In 2022, The upcoming version of Labor Rights Index will be launched, involving 135 countries, and by the end of 2022, there will also be 120 DWCs. Looking at the current status of our work, work involved decent work checks, labor rights index, and COVID-19 and labor market reforms. Under the decent work checks and labor law pages, currently there are 110 decent work checks available. These country DWCs have been translated to more than 40 local languages, and the labor rights information is available in the form of labor law pages and comprehensive country guides. Since 2015, labor law pages are the most visited pages on WageIndicator websites. The 2021 data for 124 countries, including WageIndicator global website, indicates that of the 52 million page views on WageIndicator country websites, 13 million or 24% are for labor law. And if minimum wage views are also added to it, these views increase to around 18 million, which translates to about 34.69% of the overall views. Going on to Labor Rights Index, I'll be talking about Labor Rights Index 2020 at first, which is the most comprehensive de jure index on labor rights. In 2020, we launched the Labor Rights Index, which is based on more than a decade of research by the WageIndicator Foundation and the Center for Labor Research. The index is grounded in the decent work checks and labor law pages available on 106 WageIndicator country websites. The index is a comparative tool. It's an international standard that allows comparing labor legislation worldwide, and it helps its users navigate the labor markets of over 100 countries. The Labor Rights Index looks at every aspect of the working lifespan of a worker and identifies the presence of labor rights or the lack of it in national legal systems worldwide. There are 10 indicators and 46 evaluation criteria, which are based on substantive elements of the decent work agenda and are grounded in Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UN Conventions, ILO declarations, ILO conventions, and ILO recommendations. This is a de jure index, and it measures the presence or absence of relevant legislation only. It recognizes the existence of implementation gaps and legislative provisions. However, well-drafted and inclusive laws are still a precondition for attaining decent work. Any detailed information which is required is available on the official Labor Rights Index website as well as the WageIndicator website. This is the Labor Rights Index 2020 heat map, which shows the countries with the highest and lowest score in each region. For example, in Europe, Finland and Lithuania are tied at first place with the highest score, while Belarus has the lowest score in Europe. Moving on to Labor Rights Index 2022. This is the second version of the Labor Rights Index, which will be launched in September this year. And it will include any legal updates from the last 2 years, that is 2020 and 2021. It may change scores under any of the 10 decent work indicators for each of the 115 countries. This edition of the index will analyze labor legislation as applicable on 1 January 2022. We plan to extend the coverage to 135 countries, and so we will be scoring an additional 20 countries. These are countries mainly from Central Asia, North Africa, and South America. Also, we will review sectoral collective agreements from sectors with the highest share of employment. And these collective agreements will be for countries that have a strong collective bargaining coverage, mainly in Europe, irrespective of whether minimum wages in such countries are set through collective bargaining. As the country profiles have contextual information in the form of quick facts, we're also looking and have gathered data to include trade union intensity, collective bargaining coverage, female labor force participation rate, labor force participation rate, and labor inspectors, and the quick facts for each country in the upcoming version. And finally, the official Labor Rights Index website will be updated as well. In the website, as well as in the country profiles, we will be providing the legal basis for each score by adding for each country the answers to all the questions and the legislative source for each answer. This will be added as indicators, then answers, and then legal basis for each component for every country in the Labor Rights Index 2022. And since the index is based on decent work checks, which is based on labor law, the relevant links will also be shared on the Labor Rights Index website for ease of access. So during COVID, the labor law team at WageIndicator and Center for Labor Research created a comprehensive repository of labor market reforms initiated by countries to deal with the labor market crisis. These reforms were divided into 8 different measures. And these include cash transfer, employment protection or creation, wage replacement program, unemployment benefits, social security, sick leave or family care benefit, telework or flex time, and support for self-employed. The countries with the highest number of countries introduced cash transfer as a measure, as a market reform during COVID-19, while the lowest number of countries introduced employment reforms in employment protection or creation and in support for self-employed. Now we'll be looking at the challenges in our work. The challenges that we face are languages and team retention. It's not an easy task to extract labor rights information from thousands of pages of labor legislation, including rules and regulations, particularly when the legislation is available in languages other than English. In the 135 countries of Labor Rights Index, only 33 have English as the official language, 18 have French as the official language, 17 have Arabic, 15 have Spanish, 5 have Portuguese, 4 have Russian as the official language, and China is the only country with Chinese as the official language. So these are a total of 93 countries. The remaining 42 countries have national languages, and most of the time the legislation is available only in the national language. Although country teams have been helpful in locating legislation and translating the DWC text for creating and populating labor law pages, yet the first responsibility lies on the labor law team to create the DWCs in English and deal with different languages. Also, annual updates for DWCs are a task on their own, so it is a significant challenge to keep all text up to date for all these countries, as there are always reforms happening on some topics in each country. Not each reform may lead to a score change, so this decision can be made only once after all these reforms have been checked and compared with our scoring criteria. Similarly, it is a challenge to maintain a team that is interested in working on labor legislation all the time. Research in the field of labor law is a niche, so it's not prevalent, so therefore many qualified and capable graduates, they do not consider it as career making path. So this is a Labor Rights Index heat map showing the official languages which are covered in the index. The others here shows that there are 42 national official languages where legislation is available only in the national language. Moving on to the future of our work. So in future, we aim to increase the decent work checks in labor law pages to 150 countries by 2025. We also plan to launch the third edition of the index in September 2025 with 150 countries. We were also planning to launch regional indices in the coming years as well. Although it is very difficult to collect data on de facto labor rights involving such a comprehensive list of indicators and components, we do plan to introduce some data on the implementation of labor standards. This is to be in the form of a compliance pyramid, which would be based on CEACR assessments of fundamental conventions, which are 8 core labor standards, and governance conventions, which are C81 for labor inspection and C144 for tripartite consultations. However, we do not intend to include it in the scoring and rating of the countries at this stage. We also plan to collaborate with the academic researchers in the field of comparative labor law in order to develop a system to check compliance with national regulations. Other than these initiatives, we plan to work on a contract shop that provides basic employment contracts in each country. These sample contracts can be used by small and micro employers to conclude employment contracts with workers, and this will help employers provide workers with written employment contracts in line with the provisions of local labor legislation and will lead to increased compliance in the country. Okay, this is an example of compliance pyramid for Pakistan. The compliance pyramid is based on the work of Orby and Total in 2009, and the form where they introduced it in the form of ILO pyramid of condemnation. So a compliance pyramid is created by going through key phases from reports of ILO supervisory bodies that indicates the level of satisfaction or the lack of it with the country's legislative and compliance levels. There are 5 levels in the compliance pyramid. The intensity of dissatisfaction increases from when we go from level 1 to level 5. In 2013 and 2014, Pakistan was placed in under level 3 of the compliance pyramid because of ILO's dissatisfaction with Pakistan's compliance of Convention 81, which is for labor inspection. So finally, does the work have a social impact? So the social impact of our work has involved raising awareness. Since considering the number of page views, visits on WageIndicator websites, it is safe to claim that our work has contributed to raising awareness among the masses on workplace rights in WageIndicator countries. Also through the legal help desk, country teams have responded to hundreds of questions and guided workers and small micro-employers in complying with labor legislation. Also, a race to the bottom in working conditions in developing countries is being highlighted. However, there are governments enacting legislation on uncharted areas like non-discrimination, sexual harassment at work, and various kinds of leave related to childbirth. So in a small way, we have contributed toward transparent labor markets by increasing awareness of labor rights among all stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanza and Iftikhar. This is quite impressive what you do all together there. And I hope that many people still have questions for you to ask on how you make it, how you fix it, because it's absolutely impressive. And what we know, what you will do in the future is even more. And so thanks for all the good work.